Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. First padded practice edition. I'm going to take you inside the New York Giants' first padded practice of their 2024 training camp here on July 29th, when Brian Daboll had his team out on the field. Daniel Jones connecting with Malik Neighbors. The pads were popping. It was only thud from the defense, only a few tackles to the ground, trying to take care of each other's bodies and stay as fresh for week one as they can as they prepare and really retool a wholly new team for the most part, outside of some key pieces in some specific spots. But a lot of young players factoring in, a lot of new bodies, especially up front on the offensive line. We'll talk a lot about that during this episode, I'm sure. A constant concern for this New York Giants organization, trying to quote unquote fix the O-line, something that John Mara said in the offseason was ridiculous and a constant source of frustration for him. But one thing that stood out to me in this first padded practice was some of the rookies being difference makers, but also just standing out in where the Giants were deploying them. Theo Johnson, the tight end, the rookie who had been out for the first couple of days nursing a hip ailment, not only practicing with the first team offense, but on one specific play, lined up as an inline tight end and then backed up in motion into the backfield as the running back. He was standing next to Daniel Jones, preparing as if he were the running back in pass protection. So staying in, dropping back, Daniel Jones an empty, and then moving Johnson into the backfield to be that fullback type blocker for Daniel Jones on a passing play. That was interesting to me. Confirmed for me what I saw in OTAs when I watched Johnson blocking there. And that wasn't even live full padded drills, that this was something that this big bodied Penn State product was going to be able to try to help the Giants do right out of the gate as a fourth round pick out of the Big Ten. Drew Phillips, though, stood out the most of all the rookies on this first padded practice. Drew Phillips playing slot corner in a battle technically with Isaiah Simmons and Nick McLeod. But on the first day of practice, Phillips got the bulk of the first team work and he made the most of it. He had two run stops in particular that were impressive. One tackled Eric Gray for probably a 4-yard loss, if you really wanted to call it what it was. It was funny. I talked to Drew Phillips about that. He said the first time he went in and made the stop and the coaches were giving him some crap saying, you didn't hit him. So then the next time he said, I hit him too hard. So trying to find that balance, but, juiced up to be in pads. Brian Daboll, with the funniest anecdote of the day, said that linebacker Matthew Adams showed up to the team meeting in the morning before the practice with all of his pads on, his full gear, fully padded, fully ready to go. That cracked me up. Good vibes from Matthew Adams. I can respect that. Wasn't all positive out on the field. We'll get into all of that. Thank you, everybody who's dropping questions in the queue as I introduce our latest episode here. I said this before on our last Talkin Ball Live. I'll say it again. This is going to be the most information we have in an episode in a while, just because during the offseason, there's a lot of storylines, but we're seeing a lot of football now. And when the pads come on, it gets more real, right? When the Lions come in next week for joint practices, it'll get more real. When the preseason games start, it'll turn up and on into the regular season when it counts. But we're going to get to all of that from Daniel Jones, the offensive line, the injury report, Tommy DeVito's comments, Nathan Rourke getting cut, and what it all means. How do I break it down? What do you guys think? We're going to talk about it all. And I'm going to get to all your questions in a minute. First, I want to tell you about our sponsors, and then we'll roll right in to our questions, which I saw started with Joel, who says, hopefully the pads were making noise out there on the field today. They certainly were. I'm excited to tell you guys about everything I saw on the field. Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by Boom Chagra Mushroom Super Drink. See it right here on the desk in the Talkin Ball studio. A natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Here's the code. Here's the QR code. Go check it out. You won't be disappointed. Also brought to you by BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. Right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics to baseball to Formula One racing. I've enjoyed watching the Olympic surfing. I thought that was interesting out in Tahiti. BetOnline is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE for your 50% free bet credit, I should say, on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline, the game starts here. Also brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee and Esencia de Cafe from El Salvador. Dates back to 1798. I drink it all the time when I'm doing Talkin Ball. You can get it on their TikTok shop, Estate 98, Drink Estate 98 on Instagram. All right. Thanks so much for being here. I see Joel, Hunter, Murdad, Michael, G-Men, Chronicles, my man. Saw you out there on the field. Crunch Bunch. All right. Let's get into the queue here. Hunter Keller says, good evening, Pat. How are we looking compared to last year at this time? Hunter, I think my broad strokes analysis would be, unfortunately, the offensive line is still a question mark. So a different year, different questions, but, same annoying, nagging problem of not being able to figure out who the starting five are. Of course, a lot of that this year has to do with injuries, particularly Evan Neal and John Michael Schmitz not being on the field for this first padded practice. Neal with the ankle on the PUP list still. John Michael Schmitz has a shoulder. Not clear the severity of that injury. Tried to dig a little bit on that. Was met with some resistance. I mean, no clarification, essentially. And because of that, the Giants had 3 of their 5 starting spots on the line compared to what their initial plan was that were different for this practice. So Andrew Thomas at left tackle, part of the original plan. Left guard was Aaron Stinney. That was supposed to be Jermaine Illuminor, but he was at right tackle, of course, with those bruised ribs because Neal is out. Instead of Schmitz being at center, it was Austin Schlottman, the free agent center that they signed. And then John Runyon Jr., part of the original plan at right guard, and then Illuminor, different than the initial projected starting idea of Neal in the top 5, Illuminor at right tackle. And even giving snaps at center to John Runyon Jr., the right guard that they signed in free agency from the Green Bay Packers. Here and there, just a handful. Basically, at the end of each first team period, they give him 1 snap at center. And then they kick actually either Jake Kubas, the undrafted rookie, up to right guard in Runyon's place when they remove Schlottman, or Jalen Mayfield, which is interesting. Mayfield was one of the practice squad players that Joe Shane made reference to in Hard Knocks when he said that the line against the Dolphins in last year's loss in Miami was something that Pat Mahomes couldn't have won behind. So that's where we are early on in training camp with the Giants. Only 1 week until the Detroit Lions descend on East Rutherford with that defensive line led by Aiden Hutchinson and test the Giants' mettle there. To answer your question, Hunter, the offense makes some plays, but overall isn't good enough, right? We've seen some, like the day before when they were in shells, we saw some big downfield plays, but a perfect example of we've seen this before is a deep shot to Jalen Hyatt. Nice throw, nice catch. Daniel Jones to Jalen Hyatt deep down the field into the red zone. And then 2 incompletions and an end around to Wan'Dale Robinson that went nowhere would have led to a field goal attempt. Really same old that we've seen with Daniel Jones and this offense, Brian Daboll. Daniel Jones, a guy who can move the ball between the 20s, but huge question, how can this team get the ball in the end zone? That's the question. Of course, a big difference, Hunter, Brian Daboll calling the plays out there. walking up to the huddle, using the walkie-talkie, communicating with the quarterback. A major difference. This is Daboll's offense, and he is running the show now full time. And then, generally, just the fact that I would say a difference is that at least in this practice, we saw this at first padded practice, we saw more run plays than we typically see in these practices. Certainly makes a lot of sense to do that and practice that with a lot of new running backs, a lot of new offensive linemen. Drew Lock being new on the second team, for example. Daniel Jones has been hurt, not practicing all spring. So you need reps at all of these things. A couple runs popped. Devin Singletary had one that popped. I think Eric Gray, I saw, made a nice play on one, a nice cut. But by and large, they didn't get much done in the run game. There was some good interior pass protection for Daniel Jones on a completion with the offense backed up against their own goal line to Malik Neighbors for about 7 yards or so. So that pass protection held up. But Dexter Lawrence did not practice and wasn't rushing on the interior. He was sick with some unknown illness. So those are some broad strokes, Hunter, but I'll continue to get into all of the details as we go. Murdad says, why so many injuries? Murdad, that's a great question. Of course, a question that we ask every year at this time and throughout the season. The latest, we have Tamon Fox didn't practice with a hamstring, defensive end. We had Brian Burns, of course, the headliner. Not clear what exactly is going on there. Basically, he received some attention to his foot or ankle from a trainer on the sidelines. Dan Duggan, my colleague at the Athletic, noticed that out at practice. And then we could all see Brian Burns eventually with both cleats and all his socks and everything off, standing barefoot on the grass, watching the rest of practice, not going. That was in the last maybe series or two that he was removed. I had noticed earlier in practice, and it looks like Joel is asking, did Burns get hurt? So I'm clarifying 2 questions here. It looked like during one-on-ones, by the way, Andrew Thomas really did well in his one-on-one reps against Brian Burns. It was a good battle. I thought Thomas got the better of the 2 or 3 that I saw. There were 2 that I saw that stood out to me as, the one was kind of neither guy dominated the other, was a good battle, but Thomas technically, I guess, won the rep by a hair. And then the second one, Thomas won. But during those one-on-ones, eventually I saw Burns come off of the block and the rep and kind of favoring, his right side, like looking down at his foot or his ankle or his calf area. And so I think it may have started earlier in the practice. We'll see where that goes. Wouldn't shock me. At this point, the way that the Giants operate consistently is if there's any sign of anything, they just start holding guys out. Of course, I don't, I think that they need to practice and get ready for football. Even this padded practice, I felt like it would be, 4 first team reps and then off second team, then, 4 or 6 second team reps and then third team. And then the first team offense would come on again and run 4 plays and go off. They ran first down, second down at their first padded practice. As we move on to Tuesday and to the second padded practice back to back before Wednesday's off day, I would expect that we'll see third down and red zone, which will provide some excitement and intrigue as well. Murdad, also Lawrence Cager, the tight end. I'm sure you saw me tweeting about this on X on my account, P Leonard NYDN. If you don't follow me there, where I, put out all these nuggets as I'm reporting for the New York Daily News out at the Giants facility in East Rutherford, P Leonard NYDN on Twitter and everywhere else, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, P Leonard or PL on NFL, also on Threads as well. But Lawrence Cager tossed his helmet onto the ground and actually walked over to the defensive sideline to do that. I guess it was, closer to where he was, and he was limping badly. And then he knelt down on the ground in clear pain. Eventually a trainer came over and he was able to stand up. And then the trainer and Cager jogged over to the offensive sideline gingerly, but Cager didn't practice the rest of the day. Murdad, I think, obviously it's football and that's part of it, but the Giants consistently have a problem with being able to keep slash get guys healthy. I personally think that the way they practice influences it. And certainly you can tell by the spring program with them doing more 11 on 11 that they were putting more stress on guys' bodies this year. But still, I think they need to ramp up the physicality. They need to go from thud to, at some point, you need to practice some real football. And both of the last two practices I've witnessed the last couple of days, they have 2 hours. It's scheduled for 2 hours. And they have gone till between 11:30 and 11:37 or so, both days. So actually they're scheduled 10 to 11:45 is the schedule. So they're scheduled 10 to 11:45, correction. But it seems like they go closer to 11:35, 11:37, something like that. So, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I think you need to play football to get ready for football. Michael Knight, great to see you. Michael, as always, thanks for being here. G-Men, good evening, Pat. You got to meet me at camp this past Friday near the field. I am Jack. You are truly a man of the people. Keep up the great work. G-Men, thank you so much for saying that. I remember that, Jack. Great to meet you in person finally. Thanks for always being here and supporting. I really love seeing you guys all out at the field. Looking forward to doing it, throughout the season, home games, road games, fan fest, whatever it is. It's great to interact, to talk. And, I like hearing from you guys what you're watching when you're out there, because if you notice when you're out there, it's hard. You're trying to see everything and monitor everything and reach out to people to confirm certain things you're seeing. But sometimes it's hard to follow every single thing as the story of the day. You need to be able to train yourself to say, okay, today, here is what I know the biggest story is, and I'm going to focus on that. So it could be the offensive line. It could be the running back group. It could be a position battle at slot corner, whatever it is. But you try to prioritize while also keeping your eye on the whole field and the whole team and the whole process. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I hope you had fun out there, G-Men. Chronicle says, yo, Pat, we need a swing tackle, bro. Great seeing you today at practice. Great seeing you today too, Chronicles. Gabe is, I believe, at the moment on his drive back up to Maine as we speak. Gabe, I hope you are not texting and driving right now. I hope you pulled over to ask some of these questions. Thank you so much, though, for checking in, man. You are a diehard, and I respect it. And you are a Talkin Ball diehard as well. I respect that a lot. Let's see. So, on the swing tackle, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, Chronicles was saying this to me, standing there right up against the field on the sideline. We were talking, and he was just saying he's incredulous that Josh Azudu is still being presented as an option and a solution. I totally agree. And, it's worrisome. And to me, it's frightening that right now the Giants are already dipping down into their depth along the front, and that none of those players we're talking about are guys who you can say, okay, well, that's plugged and fixed. Like, I've talked to people who say that Austin Schlottman, could be a solid, backup reserve guy who can spell your starter. So I have heard that about him. Stinney has won a Super Bowl, but has only made 12 career starts, only in the last 2 years, been in the league this will be now his 7th season. I talked to him, today after practice. He had a good mindset, basically said, listen, to be a great team like the one he was on in Tampa, you got to put your head down. You got to work. It's a long road. You got to buy in and, work to be the best you can be and be determined to do that. So I think they're really going to need to have that kind of resilient mindset as a line, if not a team as well, because rocky start, a lot of guys being put in positions maybe weren't expected, especially this early. Even Brian Daboll acknowledged that John Runyon Jr. getting some center snaps was something that was eventually going to happen just as a contingency plan, but, probably not this early, right? So Illuminor to right tackle happens immediately, even though that wasn't the plan. John Runyon Jr. starting to get some snaps at center just in case happens immediately. because of John Michael Schmitz, right? Like, this is just not what you want to see. All right, we got some super chats in the queue. So everybody, you know this, but just as a reminder, you can pay for a super chat or a super sticker here on Talkin Ball Live on the YouTube channel at PL on NFL. And that will have me answer your question immediately at the top of the chat or address your opinion, whatever it is. Even if it's just a point that you are making, you pay for the super chat. It supports the channel. I really appreciate it. And I will jump you to the top of the queue. Thank you so much, Joel, for getting us started there. He says, Pat, what is the biggest need for this team currently? An offensive lineman or a veteran cornerback? Joel, I would say that corner 2 is still a position that I would be trying to address. Offensive line also needs help. Swing tackle, Gabe mentions. But the one true thing about the Giants roster, if we're saying this from a business standpoint, right, is that they went in and they signed a lot of offensive linemen to help this effort already. They spent real money on John Runyon Jr. They spent real money on Jermaine Illuminor. These are that's just starter money, starter snaps, guys they're paying to start for them on their line. They also signed Austin Schlottman, and they also signed Aaron Stinney. So this is 4 guys they've already thrown at the line as potential solutions this offseason in the spring and free agency. I would also think that at both positions, they're going to be active pursuing possibilities on the waiver wire and after, as a claim after cut down day. I would think, especially on the swing tackle side, if they don't make a signing, I think they'll be trying to poach around the league like crazy. Now, of course, when you think about trying to get guys acclimated to offenses or schemes and getting them that late, how big of a factor will they be if you get them at that point, right? Like those are all fair questions, and it's not ideal compared to what we were hoping the plan was going to be and what Brian Daboll and the Giants all wanted, which was, let's get our front 5 together as fast as possible, right? Carmen Brasillo acknowledged that's important. Brian Daboll acknowledged it's important. All the linemen acknowledge it's important. Daniel Jones said it would be helpful. But Joel, I would say that they still haven't thrown any resources at corner, right? Like they went and got Drew Phillips, the slot corner, but Cordell Flott right now doesn't have a real challenger on the outside. I will say this, one interesting development in this practice, depth chart wise. Now, keep in mind, like as Darius Slayton was telling me about the defense or about the receivers, he said, listen, can't read too much into, the depth chart. One day they might try the young guys all day on the first team. The next day they might try me and 2 of them, and the other guy might play second team snaps. He said, I'm not going to read too much into it. You can't this early at this time of year. That said, in the first few days of camp, Nick McLeod was a clear front runner in the competition, as prominently playing with the first teamers. Him, the rookie Drew Phillips, Isaiah Simmons, they were all playing with the first team. And really, if you could make a pecking order in the first few days when they weren't in pads, it would have gone McLeod, Drew Phillips, Simmons, and that was like 2A, 2B with Phillips and Simmons. In this first practice, Drew Phillips was with the ones. The rookie was with the ones. And then we saw Simmons mixed in. But McLeod, from what I could see, it looked like he was kicked to the outside with the backups. Like I even saw him at one point playing outside corner with the third team defense against Tommy DeVito's offense. So I don't know what went on there all of a sudden in the matter of a few days. Now, like I said, it's possible that we could walk out there on Tuesday or Thursday and suddenly it's going to be McLeod in the slot and not on the outside. Or are they kicking him back outside because they're going to let him enter that competition because they like what they see from the rookie Phillips inside? Because remember, their outside corners are Trey Hawkins and Darnay Holmes behind Tay Banks and Cordell Flott. So that's a long answer, Joel, but I think it's a veteran corner, or I think it's some sort of corner. That's my answer. Tuto checking in, my man. Tuto, diehard. Speaking of diehards, thanks for the super chat, Tuto. As always, he says massive salutes and respects to Big Boss Pat and all diehard Giants fans across the road here in Jersey. Greetings from me and my fam here in Princeton. Greetings, Tuto. Thank you so much for being here, always supporting the channel. Football is finally here, as you know, Tuto. I'm sure as a rugby player and as a hard-nosed athlete yourself, you probably woke up today on Monday. It's just a different scent in the air. You know, you could hear the pads crunching. You could hear, the football, the sound of the football hitting the grass, the helmets clanking. You know, this is the time of year when it becomes, you start to see September. The air starts to change, right? Like even the other day, it started to feel a little bit like fall. You start thinking about week one. We're not quite at pumpkin coffee stages yet, right? It gets earlier and earlier. If you're a pumpkin coffee guy, we're not even in August yet, but we're definitely entering the time of year, Tuto, when the rubber's going to meet the road, from roster construction standpoint to personnel decisions to, the urgency that we see from the team. And Tuto, speaking of urgency, I found it very interesting on the top of the offensive line. Carmen Brasillo on Sunday, there was a play where Daniel Jones tried to escape to his right on the outside, and a rusher got past Jermaine Illuminor across his face upfield to contain and keep Daniel Jones in. And Carmen Brasillo, basically jumped down Jermaine Illuminor's throat. I mean, he jumped in his face, and he was talking to him very sternly right in his face. Now, then they pat each other, right? They're friends. They worked together in Las Vegas, had a lot of success together last year with the Raiders. So these are guys, it's tough love, right? But I found it interesting to see that we were seeing that intensity, a combination of frustration, tough love, and intensity from Brasillo this early. And obviously he knows Illuminor, that he can handle it because he's worked with him. But this is the time of year that we're in now. Brian Daboll in Sunday's practice lost it a little bit on the third team offense. He was asked about that, and he said it was because he had a wrinkle in the play call that they didn't execute. And he said if they had run it and done it correctly, it would have been an 80-yard touchdown. So nice hypothetical TD from the Giants offense there. All right. Let me see who we got next. Hunter Keller. Thank you, Hunter. $5 super chat says, if you had to give honest feedback on how Danny has been, how has he been in all of camp till now? Daniel Jones. So the review of Daniel Jones is this. First of all, the headline is he looks healthy and way healthier and better physically on the knee, I think, than anybody knew or thought this early in training camp. So that's a huge plus. And I'm happy for Daniel that he's in that spot as far as how he's able to practice. When I've seen him run, get outside and scramble, he's been impressively strong on it. Now, as far as throwing the ball, we've seen some good. We've seen some bad. I mean, he's been more off target during camp than I usually see him. I mean, Daniel doesn't typically like overthrow guys or misfire a lot, right? Like, I mean, usually it's decision-making sometimes that lets him down, but he's fairly accurate as a thrower, right? Open receiver, he's going to hit him typically. Throws a good deep ball, but we've seen him miss guys, a lot of overthrows. There was a day on Sunday where he had some underthrows. He had a fumbled snap backed up against the goal line today in the first day of team pads, working with Schlottman, the second string center. So overall, the first team offense has sputtered, but then made, a big play here, a big play there, one big one to Hyatt, two big ones to Neighbors. This is over the course of the last few days. Wan'Dale Robinson has caught a lot of balls. Darius Slayton has caused some as well. Slayton has had a pretty strong start to camp. But I would say the review of Daniel Jones's performance is healthy, great, good news. Play wise, need to see more, need to see you get in the end zone in that 2-minute drill once you hit high at deep. It was even something I would have rather seen on Jones's best drive, the 2-minute drill where they scored a couple days ago. He hits Malik Neighbors deep and then Jalen Hyatt on a back shoulder inside the 5. And then they call a quarterback draw to get into the end zone. You'd like to see how they could get into the end zone, throwing the ball, or once the pads are on, running the ball and really lowering the pads and trying to get it done. So Hunter still leaving us wanting more is my answer. But Drew Lock's second string offense really hasn't impressed much. He made a handful of plays, but you want to see more there. And then Tommy DeVito had a really rough day in the first day of pads. I think 3 or 4 of his first 7 passes were touched by defensive players, including a Javarius Owens interception on a tipped pass by David Long Jr., the corner, who actually had that tip pass for an interception and another pass breakup of DeVito. That pass was intended for a Bryce Ford Wheaton, but was thrown into traffic. Peter with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Peter. He says, is the shoulder for JMS, John Michael Schmitz, related to last year's injury where he missed time? I don't know that, Peter. I'm going to follow up with that tomorrow, Tuesday. This has to be a concern because this is a player who needs to continue to play. And this is the 2nd round pick. And when you talk about the investments on the offensive line, and you have Joe Shane's number 7 overall pick out and his 2nd round pick out, supposed to be your starting center and right tackle. This is how you end up in situations like this. Not what you want to see. Definitely, though, Peter, that's where your mind goes when you hear shoulder with JMS, given last season and his absence. So not loving that. Going to get an answer to that for you. I will say this, Peter. Not to guess at anything, but I will say that when the Giants are coy and cagey about these injuries, they tend to linger longer than you would like. So, for example, Evan Neal goes from he's not far off to, now he's basically out indefinitely, seemingly. And I asked Brian Daboll point blank, is there concern? Will he be available week 1? Is there concern he won't be? He said he couldn't give a timeline. He said it's day to day. When he's ready, he'll be out there. So that's concerning. John Michael Schmitz, right? He's out a couple days here, but you can't really get any clarity on exactly what's going on with the shoulder. Is he standing on the field out there with his teammates? Yeah. But is he doing anything? No. Tyler Nubin, the rookie safety. Oh, it's nothing. He'll be fine. Still hasn't practiced. Is he out there with the players? Yes, still hasn't practiced. So, have to wait and see on that, but don't love it. Don't love it. Let's see. Chronicle says he met Tay Banks and Matthew Adams after practice. Nice. Love Tay. Haven't met Adams yet, but sounds like a funny guy based on the pad story. Ryan, great to hear from you. Ryan checks in with $10 on the super chat. Thank you so much, Ryan. Always a great supporter. Another diehard. He says, Pat, am I being overly optimistic in my hopes for Cager and Turbo making the 53? Also, will we carry 3 quarterbacks? Cager is an interesting case study. So first of all, he did get hurt today. Looked like an ankle maybe or a foot. Be something to monitor. But he left about earlier than halfway through the team period, maybe after the first team offensive series, and didn't return. Was out there with the team but didn't return. That said, he's a player who now, for a second straight year, is having an encouraging offseason and parts of training camp. Last year, it's funny enough, last year, the storyline was almost exactly the same on Cager. I had him on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast last year, one-on-one, and, projected where he was going, his trajectory. and you could see it developing. He and Darren Waller had a relationship that was good. But what happened with Cager last year is the Giants coaching staff, Brian Daboll, like there were times where maybe he missed an assignment, on a block, especially believe in the goal line on the goal line in Buffalo. He missed a key assignment on a key play down there and basically, got buried, was cut, ended up back on the practice squad, buried down the depth chart and not receiving any other chances. Of course, we saw him contributing, on the field in that playoff game in Minnesota, right? Going back to 2022, he was coming on strong late that season. And so, bottom line is the answer on Cager is based on talent and a lot of his performance at this time of year. That's not overly optimistic that he would make the 53, right? But assignment wise and being well-rounded on this team and being able to help them in that regard, there's just clearly an obvious disconnect between what the coaches are expecting of him consistently and what he's able to deliver. Now, he does seem to have a shorter leash than other guys, though. So I don't entirely understand that part of it because I still feel like he clearly helps them as a receiver when he's on the field. But on the tight end depth chart, you do have Theo Johnson. You have Chris Manhertz. That was Daniel Jones' best throw of the day on Monday in pads. Was a throw up the left seam to Chris Manhertz, the tight end for hard to say with my depth perception. I was in the end zone when he threw it, but maybe 25 yards or so, 30 yards. So that was a nice completion. But you have those two, Theo Johnson and Chris Manhertz. You have Daniel Bellinger, who's getting a lot of run. So that's 3 tight ends. And then, Jack Stoll, Lawrence Cager, and those guys. Tyree Jackson actually making several catches from Drew Lock in this practice. Jack Stoll did have a drop today, 3 drops by the Giants offense today, two fumbled snaps. So a fumbled snap by Jones, a fumbled snap by DeVito, and then drops by Wan'Dale Robinson from Jones. There was Jack Stoll on a drop from, I want to say Locke. And then there was a third drop that's escaping me at the moment. Eric Gray had the drop. So it might have been Stoll from DeVito and Gray from Locke. But I guess my point is, Ryan, I think Cager's a bubble guy who has a lot of high-end traits that put him on the 53. And then there's some of that missed assignment, playbook, well-roundedness that clearly is something that Brian Daboll has a short leash and short fuse for. So he's a guy who's right there. And then Turbo. So Turbo seems to make plays. Dante Miller, technically the rookie, from South Carolina, had a couple touchdowns the other day in shells. Definitely shows some jump and some juice. I mean, Eric Gray's a draft pick, and listen, he's a really nice kid too. But Eric Gray does nothing for me compared to, I think if he's your number 2 and, he and Tyrone Tracy Jr. basically are running as your number 2 backs per se behind Devin Singletary. Like if a guy like Turbo is making plays, I think you have to give him a bump and give him a chance. Yes, Turbo, especially with the kick return rules and the new kick returns and, needing guys with some burst. I'd actually say as we stand here and now, Turbo's a guy I would have my eye on there, who would excite me about potentially making the team with that role and what he's shown so far as a pass catcher out of the backfield and, with burst and some playmaking ability. You asked about, will the Giants carry 3 quarterbacks? I mean, I would think that they would cut DeVito down to the practice squad. And that would be the plan. That's how I would see it. I mean, this gives us an opportunity to go into his comments, which I was not actually standing there when he said this to a group of reporters, but on Sunday, he said to a group of reporters that the Giants would be, gambling. He said they could make that gamble as far as cutting him, and leaving him available to other teams to pick up or, risking losing him. And that is just a fascinating. I mean, you have to admire his confidence. And of course, players need that confidence to succeed. It's part of why they're all here in the first place, really, is they're able to believe in themselves and, put in the work, that work ethic, and so they can't exactly turn it off. But just a fascinating situation here, right? Where can we talk about Nathan Rourke being cut from the team without ever really competing in training camp at quarterback? I mean, this no one, I'm not sitting here and telling you I know exactly what he would be, but this guy was a stud in the CFL, an MVP, and can sling the ball around the yard and has been a capable, like scout team quarterback for some NFL teams. And it's just funny to me that DeVito is talking, kind of like dropping down the gauntlet of like daring them. Yeah, if you cut me, you're gambling, like this and that. But he was just handed this third string job by the Giants, right? The Giants are now, Brian Daboll, they're saying essentially Rourke was here because they didn't know where Daniel would be because Jones is healthy. Now there's not enough reps for four quarterbacks. That said, though, I mean, Rourke did get some snaps in the spring. I definitely think he's a natural thrower of the football. DeVito is what he is. I mean, it was a good story last year, but I don't think he's more than what he's been so far. And I'm very happy for him and his story and what he's achieved and what he will be able to achieve because of, what he did and what he was a part of last season. But to me, it's funny that the story has become about DeVito essentially daring the Giants, and the fact that he even said that, because my focus is on, you had another quarterback in the building who behind Daniel Jones, no one has stood up, stepped up and played like a guy who obviously deserves playing time if Daniel Jones goes down yet. It's just a fact that no one has. Drew Lock hasn't, Tommy DeVito hasn't. Like Nathan Rourke, I thought should have been given a little bit more of a chance. So that's my 2 cents. Crunch Bunch says, any update on Greg Van Roten? We need to sign him desperately with Illuminor shifting to right tackle. No update, Crunch Bunch. I keep checking in on that and seeing if there's any developments, but nothing doing at the moment is my understanding. But continuing conversations, right? So door remains open, but no developments, yet since what we last saw. Chronicle says, are you hearing anything about the guard we brought in for a visit? What about the depth problems we were talking about today? Welcome for the DeVito comments. Yeah, Chronicles actually told me about DeVito's quote because I hadn't been standing there when DeVito said it, and I had a separate interview with Darius Slayton I wrote up and then went and did a bunch of other things. So I just hadn't seen it yet. So Chronicles tipped me off to let me know, hey, do you see what DeVito said? Gabe can confirm this for you. When he told me that DeVito said they would be gambling by cutting him, I thought he was kidding. I said, what do you mean? No, really? Are you serious? Like that was exactly what the conversation was. He could tell you that too. So your question was anything about a guard that the Giants brought in for a visit? Haven't heard about any signings, Gabe. No. But I know that, in the last week, they've had receivers in for workouts. They've had, they had another workout, I think was it DBs? And so it wouldn't surprise me as if they're continuing to poke around on the offensive line as well, where they definitely need better bodies for sure. But I'll work on finding out what that visit is about, Chronicles. Let me see if I can get some answer for you there as we talk. All right. So let's get to the next question here. Gary says, do you think Turbo Miller can make the team? Yeah, so kind of what I was talking about with Ryan. Yes, I think he looks like a playmaker. And also with the kick return rule, we definitely saw in the spring that they had him on the kick return depth chart as one of 2 returners out on the field. So I think the combination of those skills maybe helps him on. Right now, it's Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy, Eric Gray, and then you're looking at Turbo Miller and Jayshon Corbin and the likes of those guys. So, To me, it would be bumping Gray out, a Joe Shane draft pick, probably for Turbo Miller if he was going to make the roster. That's what I would say. So that's what he's contending with there. All right, let's see. Giants Media, what's up? Great to see you. Great to see you. Thanks for being here. Welvin says, do you think Jalen Hyatt or Darius Slayton ends up getting the wide receiver 2/3 spot outside of Neighbors and Wandale? I think that Slayton is the more reliable and Hyatt is the bigger playmaker. I do think Hyatt, like we talked about the back shoulder throw that Daniel Jones made to him in the red zone the other day. I do think that Jalen Hyatt, they're continuing to incorporate him into some new roles, maybe some new routes that he's doing a better job of running, adding things to his plate. And I do think, of course, based on drafting him in the 3rd round and also his big playmaking ability, that's somebody they want on the field as much as he can handle it and prove that he can consistently produce. So probably won't be as lopsided as it was last year with Slayton, being overwhelmingly more so a factor. But definitely it's not, Slayton is a steady player, right? And he and Daniel Jones also see the game the same way. They work together very well. So that said, Joe Shane draft pick, Jalen Hyatt, they're really trying to groom these guys to be not only the future, but a huge part of the present. So, we talked about Darius Slayton and the idea of whether a trade could happen. His main point to me the other day was that he's not focused on that anymore. And he also was pretty supremely confident that when the dust settles, he's one of the best options to be on the field consistently for the Giants. Of course, he did clarify that his market has been strong as far as over the years while he's been in the NFL. Teams have wanted to trade for him. It's not like he's an unwanted player, contrary to what some others may have said or pointed out, or just in general what perception might be about him. But generally it seems like at this point it's tracking to that Slayton will be on the team. That's as of this moment based on what he has said. It's also interesting, like as much as like a Slayton trade based on what he said on the Keyshawn Johnson podcast and all that, it makes sense, especially because they want to get Jalen Hyatt on the field more and they want him to be able to show that he can handle those reps, and they do believe he can be that. But of course, then you're flirting with, stealing a consistent, reliable player from the wide receiver unit and kind of robbing yourself of your higher end talent at the position and depth. So that's also a little dangerous from the Giants end. Crunch Bunch says, what do you think is Theo Johnson's upside? Good combination of size and speed. The way I view Johnson is a better version of Daniel Bellinger. And what I mean by that is Daniel Bellinger is a big dude. I mean, a physically imposing person. And he can catch the ball, right? He's made plays as a receiver and he can serve as a blocker. But what we've found is, first of all, of course, not the fastest player in the world. I'm not asking him to be. I'm just saying, not the fastest player in the world. And in the blocking area, he has had a problem with holding penalties, some of which have cost the Giants, killing some big plays, bringing the ball back for, canceling and negating those plays. So Theo Johnson profiles as a bigger, slightly faster, and, a red zone target who also looks to me like a better and meaner blocker potentially. And Daniel Bellinger tries hard and works hard and sticks his nose in there. So I'm not trashing the player there. I'm just saying, if you're asking me what Theo's upside is and what he looks like, I think it's almost like the hope is that if he can be what Bellinger was supposed to be, or what the Giants thought he was, that's the upside there. I guess when you talk upside and really like his highest potential for what he could do for the Giants, you're talking about touchdowns, like red zone target, right? Like uh, fade pattern, winning one-on-ones, out muscling guys, boxing safeties out, right? For touchdowns in the red zone, that kind of stuff, being a regular red zone weapon. Intel says, hi, Pat, honest answer. How does Daniel Jones look? Has made some plays, but generally has left a lot out on the field to be desired. Wandale dropped a pass from him today. But Daniel has been a little off target. I'm impressed by how healthy he looks. And he has made some big plays. I mean, he's driving the ball downfield. I think anybody who, after this offseason and all the conversation, justifiably so, about his knee and about his health with his neck and everything, I think anyone who sees him throw in person downfield right now would be surprised at how strong and good he looks, for sure. Also, one thing that can't be ignored when we talk about quarterback battles and the Giants depth chart and all that, Daniel he's a big guy. Like, he's a big player, big athlete who sees the field, sees downfield, sees over the line, strong, runs with power. So physically, like, profiles much differently than a guy like Drew Lock even does on the field at quarterback. But Intel, same old stuff as far as enough plays that you feel like he could be the guy, but not enough to make you feel like he's playing well. That's the best way I would say it. So kind of same old, right? So Devin asked about Turbo as well. Any word on him getting return reps with special teams? Do you believe he can make the team over Eric Gray, considering Gray's poor pass blocking? Yeah, so Devin, you're right on it. That's exactly kind of what we were just talking about. And yes, going back to the spring, Turbo was in the mix in the top 4, I remember, as far as the returners went in kick returns. I believe the top 4 they used, so like in groups of 2, Singletary, Turbo, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and who was the 4th one? I wrote it in the Daily News and we talked about it here. I don't think it was Gunner at that point. I think Gunner was out there. But yeah, definitely. I think clearly they're looking at the running backs, but also guys with big playability there. And yes, I think they should be looking at him as an option over Eric Gray in that backfield is my opinion. I agree with you. Todd says, with Daboll taking over the offense and Kafka not being allowed to interview with Seattle, do you see any friction there? Todd, the way I view it is that Kafka is keeping his head down and waiting it out. It's clearly not an optimal situation for him, but he had no ability to get to Seattle without the Giants letting him out, so he just has to accept it. Of course, for his career, that is not an excellent thing because now you get put in a situation where even if the Giants offense this year was to do well, the credit would go to Brian Daboll and not to him. Right. So there's friction as far as you're pointing out the obvious that is clearly not doing the best thing for one of the people involved in that situation. And certainly, a lot of that's being brushed under the rug, and the Giants are kind of trying to move on from that from a public relations and narrative standpoint. But it's obviously very awkward standing there seeing Mike Kafka so uninvolved in a lot of the process. But I've said before, Daboll mismanaged all of that last season in a big way. But I totally agree with the idea now going into this season where if your butt's on the line as a coach, as an executive, as somebody in charge who's on the hot seat, you need to lean on whatever is best. And you need to, quote unquote, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out my way. Like, I do believe in that. In other words, you've coached and you've learned and you've researched everything about how to do this job. And now you have an opportunity to do it at the highest level. And now you're under some pressure to get it done or else. what you need to do, and what I totally believe in, is going to the well and going to what you know you do best to make the best case for you to stay on. And so if Daboll feels clearly like the offense is, is the way for him to not only keep his job, but also is what he does best. Like if he feels play calling is what he does best, and that's his best way to help this team and to move this in a positive direction, then that I agree with that philosophy at this point of doing it. Of course, Kafka ends up being a casualty of that, and also of um, you know just the Giants' desire to optically not look like a team that was losing all three of its coordinators, including two voluntarily, because that's what would have happened. And so they prevented him from leaving, and that was an optics decision. The Crunch Bunch says CB2 also looks like a priority signing. Correct. Flock can't be the guy heading into the season. Yeah, for right now, he is. It's very interesting. But I agree with you that at least agree, more competition there. Like Cordell has made a lot of strides as a player. So I'm not sitting here saying you can't play Cordell Flott. I'm not that far, but there needs to be a competition for that spot. Like handing it to your slot corner from last season. I don't know. I just don't. I don't get it. Will Drew Lock play a half next preseason? In the preseason, or is it going to be a DeVito show? Good question, Giants media. I would say we don't know how the playing time is going to break out yet. And especially with the joint practices, a lot of times now these teams give more time to their starters and to prominent players in the joint practices. And then they use the preseason games for the reserves competing and that type of stuff. But I would say that Locke and DeVito will both get, ample room or ample opportunities. To me, this feels so much like a new team and a first-year team. And there's so much new about it. Of course, Daboll's offense is still Daboll's offense, but there's just so much new personnel, so much new that's happening with Daboll running the whole show and calling the plays. And so to me, you need Drew Lock to play in games in the preseason. You need to play all these guys in the preseason, even the starters, more than you typically would, in my opinion, to have them ready to roll in week one. They need to be ready to play a football game. All right, let's see. Revolution says, do you think by week one we still sign a cornerback and guard, or are we going to claim a lot on waivers? I would look at the waiver wire. I think they're definitely kind of scouring at the moment, just looking at anybody who's out there and available, and trying to be smart about it, because it can't hurt to create some depth at areas at the moment, even if you're not going to land a high-end player at those spots right now. But I do think cut down is a time to watch, because the Giants don't have a ton of money to play around with. So if they're going to make a big quote unquote signing, probably one signing, if you're talking about spending significant like starter money, in the whatever, 6 million for a year range, or 7 million or 5 million or whatever it is, probably one of those. But outside of that, they need to be smart about how they spend their money at the moment. Dr. Garrett says, what's happening, Pat? I don't think Hard Knocks make the Giants look like they were a well-run organization. Many awkward moments in Shane's office. Yeah, I agree. And even if you disagree that they don't come off well, I do think they come off like a leadership team. If you're talking about, Shane and Daboll in particular, that is brand new and like rookies essentially. And I know they're in year 3, but what I mean is like guys who are still learning on the job, doing this job for the first time is what I mean. Based on some of the conversations and how personal these things seem to get at times. And Daboll with his feet on the coffee table in front of the owners, and definitely some of the awkward moments. I agree. I think what it reflects is an organization that has a lot of personalities and politics involved in it. And they do have this new, young, fresh face who they are paying to take them in a different direction than they have guided themselves over the last several years. So that's a huge part of it. But of course, that creates some discomfort. And there is something to be said for needing that type of discomfort to try to turn something around that hasn't been going optimally, right? And almost think of it as a business that needs to pay big money for a consultant to come in, office space style. What exactly do you do here? And kind of clean up. So there is an element of that it was necessary for the Giants. But I agree with you, Dr. Garrett. I think that a major takeaway, and this isn't just me, but people around the league, a major takeaway is, just the way it's strange how sometimes it seems like a lot of good information is being discussed, but then the decisions don't necessarily seem to reflect the information that's coming in. If that makes sense. But it has been fascinating. I am grateful to HBO and to the Giants for providing so much content. I mean, I didn't expect them to reveal as much as they did as far as how much they have shown. So that has been refreshing. I want to tell you guys again about Boom Chaga, our sponsor here, and then we'll get right back to the queue and the questions. Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard is brought to you by the Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25 or access it through the QR code on your screen, you will get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. Remember this QR code, this Talkin Ball 25 code, if you want to type it in on the website there, boomchaga.com. Try it. I think you'll love it. Has made a difference for me. I think it'll make it a difference for you too. All right, let's get into more of the queue. Matthew says thoughts on Evan Neal. I think that from my understanding, the focus is to try to have him ready for week 1. So whatever they're doing right now, it's about trying to make sure he's ready for the regular season. So that accounts for maybe this extended absence at the start of training camp as he works his way back and continues to rehab from that setback in the spring. I think that, of course, there's an onus and pressure on him to be better than he has been, and he has to own that, and he does, I'm sure. There is also the element of it was out of his control that they misdiagnosed his ankle injury as a sprain initially before they called it a fracture and did surgery on it in December. I still think, based on how we sit here and now, Evan Neal, that's a player they need to work out for them. Like, they need Evan Neal to be a factor in a positive way for them in some respect. I mean, considering the investment he was as the number 7 overall pick in the first round, there's a lot riding on it. I do think that moving him to left guard would be a potential solution, or at least trying that out. I think that would be helpful. I think, will he be able to win a left guard spot? Would that be his best position? I don't know necessarily, right? I mean, we haven't seen it, but he did play left tackle and left guard in college at Alabama, as well as right tackle, but 2 of his 3 seasons he played on the left. And, to me, now we'll see, right? But to me at the moment, kicking Illuminor out to right tackle that quickly, it seems like a sign of that's where Illuminor is now going to play all of a sudden, because we know in the spring they were moving Josh Azudu there all the time when Evan Neal wasn't practicing, and he was there, and Illuminor wasn't moving from left guard at all. Like, it was very interesting and kind of different. It was different from maybe what we expected of him, maybe doing a little bit of both, or And then there was also the idea of, okay, we know they need help in the interior, but he's really a true right tackle. Why isn't he at right tackle if Neal's out? So I do feel like a Luminor being moved there makes it seem like now that's a Luminor spot. But it's very confusing, not only what's going to happen, but also what has happened and how the Giants have adjusted. It's felt very seat of their pants at times. And, the fact of the matter is, when we were talking earlier about will they sign a corner or an offensive lineman, I do think they've invested a lot already in the O-line. And I don't mean as much as I would have. I mean, I would have done more, right? I would have drafted a lineman as well. But what I'm talking about is they did sign 4 offensive linemen, plus they have Evan Neal who's supposed to come back from injury and help. So when I say Evan Neal is a critical piece still, despite the fact that he hasn't practiced yet, I mean that this is a big-bodied, imposing player who, and as John Runyon Jr. said himself, he said it's not his fault. He was talking about Evan Neal. He said it's not his fault. He feels like he could be a good player. He feels like he's a great athlete for his size. And he said so physically as he gets better, he thinks he'll contribute to the team because he likes what he sees mentally in the meeting room as far as going through the plays in the playbook. So hope that's a pretty good, well-rounded opinion and review of Evan Neal to this point, but we'll see where it goes from here. Because like I said earlier, Brian Daboll would not say even that he'll definitely be ready for week 1, which I didn't like seeing. D. Linder says, is Burns okay? Looks like a foot. We'll see. Don't know exactly yet. We'll talk to Brian Daboll in the morning and get more information on that. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets. What is going on? Great to see you as always. Tuto says, Pat, this may be my last of my little vacay here with my fam. Oh man, Tuto, that's a bummer. I hope you got some beach time in though. I know you probably did. Respect to you and vacay down in Princeton. No Met says no pumpkin lattes. Yeah, no doubt. No, I'm not a pumpkin latte guy, but every now and then I like I drink a lot of Estate 98. That's my preferred iced coffee. That's the one I like. That's our sponsor. Every now and then though, I will get a Dunkin' pumpkin iced coffee. Just a little bit of the pumpkin though. It's super sugary if you get the regular amount that they put in. So if you get a little bit in a nice coffee, excellent. Telling you. Michael says, I think Drew L has to play some preseason games for the Giants. He needs to show he can play in this offense. Yeah, I agree with that, Michael. Dr. Garrett says this offensive line is going to be the death of me and this team. So over it. Can't we just get average play? I would settle for below average. Still having a recurring nightmare of Gettleman trading for Billy Price. Yeah, no, exactly. I actually referenced Gettleman the other day, writing about it, how Joe Shane, here is Joe Shane, going out and interviewing, or having Greg Van Roten come in for a visit. And it made me think of the Ben Bredesen, Billy Price trades at, right before the start of the season, as if Dave Gettleman didn't have an entire offseason to try to fix his offensive line and thought it was, and it wasn't. I mean, geez, come on. It's going to be the death of all of us. I mean, John Mara said it himself at the owners' meetings. It's ridiculous. That's what he said. And he also said, listen, we have a lot invested in this line. 2 number 1 picks, a 2nd round pick at center, money in free agency. Like, it's go time. And he made that very clear. Tudo says, Pat, Giants new O-line coach, name in Italian, pronounced Carmine Barrichello, mate. All right. So instead of Brasillo, it's Barrichello. Oh man, I gotta call him that, see if he responds to it, see if he answers to it. I like it. Getting schooled here by Tuto and some Italiano. Appreciate that. Guys, remember, we are Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. This is Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard, brought to you by Boom Chaga, Bet Online, and Estate 98 Coffee. We do these typically Mondays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then during the season, we do Talkin Ball Live post-game from the press box after the Giants games, home and away. That's a lot of fun. Also, plenty more podcast episodes coming your way Rich Salgado, Big Daddy, as they call him in the insurance industry. Part of our behind the scenes series I'm getting started. Anytime I interview somebody who is affiliated with the league, influential, but maybe not obvious to the outside world and to people on the outside, try to kind of bring their stories to light. He's got some great Giant stories going back to their Super Bowl victories and how he factored in. I think you'll really like that. That's my interview with Rich Salgado on the podcast here on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods for those who are listening on audio. I appreciate you guys as well. Remember, follow me on Twitter or X at PLeonardNYDN, and also everywhere else at PL on NFL, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Threads. And of course, I am the NFL columnist and Giants beat writer for the New York Daily News. Been at the Daily News since 2010, actually, and have been covering the NFL since my first season was 2016. So that was the Ben McAdoo playoff year, boat trip, all that. That was a nice little introduction. I was basically covering the Giants for a month before the Josh Brown news hit. So I still remember sitting there in the airport listening to John Mara on Mike Francesa. So, before that game in London. So that was quite a year, quite an onboarding process onto the beat and onto the NFL world that I now reside in. And I couldn't be happier to share all this with you guys. We're really building a fun and strong community here. FYI, the brand, I got a brand new logo coming. I got some new swag coming your way. Talkin Ball shop is going to be up live in a little while. We're going to have some gear. I know Joey B and a lot of people have been clamoring for that. So we're going to get that rolling. It's going to be out there soon. I'm looking forward to rocking it. Looking forward to see you guys in it as well. That is for sure. All right, let's see. Tuto says, no Mets. Pumpkin lattes are bad for you, mate. Slows you down on your wheels. Ain't that the truth? Revolution is accurate. He says we need to be active on the wire. Joe Shane's best work on cut down day. Yeah, that's what they need. G-Men Hurt says, I was at the camp 2 days last week, and the offensive line is going to have to play better. Absolutely. And I will post a clip of a play where the interior protected well as Daniel Jones was backed up in the end zone today, and he hit Malik Neighbors for a completion. So that was encouraging. Of course, Dexter Lawrence didn't practice today, so we'll see how it goes tomorrow if he's on the field. But and it's how they're playing, and it's also who is playing, right? So it's both. G-Man Hurt says DeVito looks better than Locke. He has completed more passes than Locke, I would say, albeit going against the third team defense. And also DeVito's lows are lower than Locke's lows. Other than the first day, Locke had that interception where he tried to dump it off and it hit off Jordan Phillips's helmet and was intercepted by Boogie Basham. But by and large, I feel like DeVito's lows are the lowest, right? That makes sense. Yeah, that's right, G-Man. Nathan Rourke never got a shot at camp. I don't get it. I don't understand why more people don't question it. As far as the starting wide receiver conversation, Ryan Fisher says, let's not forget that as offensive coordinator of the Bills, Brian Daboll ran the most 4 wide receiver offense in the league. Ryan, that's a very good point. And also, I'm going to star that comment, favorite that. That's very well said. They have shown some 4 wide out looks, trips formations. We have seen that, some empty, like I said, there was an empty formation today where then Theo Johnson, the rookie tight end, kicked back from inline tight end into the backfield to block for Daniel Jones back there. But you're right. You're right. The 4 wide receiver and, unfortunately you don't, that does bring us to the fact that they do need a running game to survive with this quarterback in this offense, how it's comprised. And you don't want to become the, all pass all the time Buffalo Bills. Maybe that suits Josh Allen, but that doesn't work for most quarterbacks. And it's hard to imagine that would work for Daniel Jones. But Ryan, your point is correct that we could see Jalen Hyatt and Darius Slayton both on the field a lot because Daboll's running a lot of 4 wide. You're right. Matthew says, Pat, Joe Shane mentioned in Hard Knocks he didn't want a $40 million quarterback handing off to a $12 million running back. The Eagles have a $51 million quarterback handing off to a $13 million running back plus 2 highly paid wide receivers. What's up? Yeah, I mean, the Eagles have a different opinion of the type of player Barkley can be for them. Particularly, they think he can help them in the passing game. Joe Shane and the Giants did not see Barkley the same way as a receiver. That usage and projection on his value was all kind of tied in together. So that's part of the reason why. Also, the Eagles, let's see. The Eagles have a better offensive line, a way better offensive line than the Giants. And so they also are projecting Barkley to be able to unleash and be a home run hitter. You know, if they can give him a runway of 6 or 7 yards into an open hole, we know what Barkley can do with that. It's just like he didn't see that a lot as a Giant. But if he sees that as an Eagle, right? So I think it's part of what the Giants started to feel like they had to identify themselves as, what they were able to do. Also, their preference to be a passing offense and not lean on a running back. They didn't, and Joe Shane just didn't believe in the positional value of running back and investing there. The Eagles have their own problems, of course. Is Saquon Barkley going to help them fix them all? It could end up that they have egg on their faces for doing that while the Giants don't. That's very possible. But I would say, Matthew, that having good players on your team is a good thing, and letting go of good players usually isn't. And I know that sounds hilariously simple, but sometimes people really do overthink these things. And so Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in Baltimore, Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley in Philadelphia. Are the Giants wise to not invest in Saquon Barkley with Daniel Jones? Or is it frivolous for them to overlook that he helps them and scores most of their touchdowns and is a guy who would make their quarterback better? That's going to be a question that has to get played out, but it certainly is interesting seeing them adjudge the situation so differently from some of these other teams. Turbo Duran says, Giants suck and Giants fans are soft as hell too. Go ahead, block me. That's what you guys like to do. Okay. Wow. Turbo is aggressive right now. Wait, first of all, I saw Turbo and I thought maybe Dante Miller was in the chat for a second. That's what I thought. But hey, listen, Turbo is a prominent name on this chat. We try not to be mean and insult people like that, Turbo. Sorry, I left that comment up too long on the screen. I'm slow on the draw here. Sorry about that, guys. But yeah, let's play nice. Let's play nice. And listen, I think every fan base has its people who have thick skin and people who are soft, right? Or people who take things to heart too much, or there's some people who see things clearly. There's some people who see it through the team's colored glasses. There's some people who are always doubting. There's some people who always see the bright side. Like, our friend Luann, who's in the chat a lot. Luann always sees the bright side, always optimistic, always feels like the Giants are going to turn around. So there's all different types of fans for every different organization. So that's how I feel about that. Let's see. Welvin says also higher paid offensive line and better defense as far as the Eagles go. Yes, for sure. Yes. Part of that is definitely the equation with the Eagles. Moet Olson says, can you see Tyrone Tracy Jr. taking over RB2 versus Eric Gray? Yes. Yeah. I think really, like, there's days where Tracy's the second guy up. There's days where Gray's the second guy up. Tracy seems to be like very strongly in that mix already. To me, Eric Gray roster spot is, should be in jeopardy. But, are they just going to cut guys to protect their own players that they have as incumbents like they did with Nathan Rourke, MD says, not sure if this has been asked, but I haven't seen much on him. How has Newbin looked? Tyler Newbin has not practiced yet. He has a calf issue, a tight calf, according to Brian Daboll. He was out on the field today with his uniform on, which was different, but then went over and just worked with the rehabbing guys, right? So he did a workout, but didn't practice. So haven't gotten to see him on the field yet. I will say this. Like, I like Dane Belton a lot as a guy, and we've seen him make some plays, including last year. But there was a throw today that Daniel Jones made to Jalen Hyatt where Dane Belton saw it and really, I thought, should have picked it off and jumped the route. It's kind of like a deep in route from Hyatt. And he was slow on kind of his reaction and his break on the ball, and Hyatt made the catch. But it shouldn't have been a catch. It should have been broken up. The safety should have made the play, and Belton didn't. And that made me think Tyler Nubin, like those are the kind of plays if I'm watching on film, as Tyler Nubin comes off being injured and gets healthy and gets into these practices, mistakes like that or slow reactions like that from Belton, those are things as a coach I'm thinking of when I say, yeah, let's throw Nubin in here and see what we can do. I still think that's a position battle that we haven't seen play out yet because he's been on the side. Ryan says, let's hope that their offensive line wasn't better. New year, new group, new coaches, but yes, they stink still until proven otherwise. And I'm sure Pat agrees whether he can say it or not. Let's see. Ryan, are you talking about the Eagles there? Or are you talking about the Giants offensive line and that they were better last year than this year? I'm not exactly what you mean there. Because we have been bouncing back and forth here between Giants and then Barkley and the Eagles offensive line. But I would say if you're talking about the Giants offensive line, they have a lot of new pieces on it. And also they have several guys banged up right now. So the combination of a lack of chemistry because guys aren't playing together yet who are going to start in these games together. And then also injuries, including some murkiness about what exactly the status of these players is. That's part of, again, why it's fair to doubt at this position. Williams says that's because the Eagles have a team that can compete for a Super Bowl and the Giants need to put money in more important positions. Why is it so hard to understand? That's part of it, William. But also, it's just about whether they judge that this player can elevate an offense. I mean, I keep going back to it, but it really bears reminding that the Giants don't score a lot of touchdowns without Saquon Barkley. Like Saquon typically is the guy who gets in the end zone for them. So you're right that making that kind of investment in a running back can be viewed as a quote unquote luxury piece, and the Giants do need to make investments in other parts of their roster. That's for sure. But did they need to do it at Barkley's expense? I think if you go back to the year prior and how they handled that contract situation and Daniel Jones' contract situation and who they ended up with and who they ended up having to let go or deciding to let go, there were definitely ways for the Giants to keep that player and not be in a position where you're reviewing it as, oh, this is only a luxury investment. We were talking about a player who helped their team significantly. But you are right. That is an element of it. Miz, what's going on? He says, hey, Big Pat, Miz here. Talk about Jones. He looks pretty good. Looks good physically for sure, Miz. Something to be desired on how much they are able to actually complete these passes and move the ball. But definitely with Hyatt and Neighbors, you can see Jones's ability to push the ball down the field can be rewarded more often because now he really has three receivers, including Slayton with those two, who he can take those deep shots to down the field, make those plays deep. And we know Daniel Jones does throw a good deep ball, can air it out. And like I said, running well on the knee. I think Daniel Jones is the clear best Giant quarterback. Physically, he looks like it. No one else has played it at any level to challenge him at all. And really the only one who would be Drew Lock. But Lock hasn't played to that level yet. So it hasn't played out in any respect close to what maybe we anticipated it could be, depending on what his health was and how Lock was playing, especially with Lock getting all the snaps all spring. So no controversy there being created. I think Daniel is the kind of player who at this juncture he knows that this is about wins, touchdowns and wins, right? Protect the ball, score touchdowns, win games. Like that, those are the three, right? Those are the three big ones. That's the checklist when he wakes up every Sunday or Monday or Thursday for his games this season. Um, I think that with Brian Daboll having so much control of what this offense is going to be and look like, you're certainly going to see them use and deploy Jones as a runner again, as they did in 2022, and try to protect him that way. The defenses in the NFL did seem to catch up, though, to Jones and to not to just to Jones, but to Daboll's scheme last year. Like early last season, teams were kind of calling out what was coming, and the Giants weren't getting away with the same stuff they did in 2022. So I think it's going to be put things on Jones's shoulders. He's not Josh Allen, but how can we run this offense the way we did with Josh, tailor it to Daniel, and make it work? He looks the part when he's out there and sometimes making these plays, and he certainly he's an impressive looking quarterback. You could see why someone would watch him for 5 minutes during making certain throws and say, man, this guy looks like he might have it. But you just keep wanting to see a little bit more. But Miz, I will say this, and I wrote this already, and I've talked about this before already early in camp, but it's worth saying again. Whatever doubts anybody has about Daniel Jones, and it's valid to say he needs to play better and the pressure's on, all these things. The Giants are letting him down if this offensive line keeps being this revolving door of backups and injuries and inconsistency. Like, that's the one where I just say, give me a break. I mean, it's been 3 years here with this regime. Like, could you put a line together that can protect this guy so he can make a couple damn throws already? And I'm talking, this is somebody who I know they tried to replace him and tried to trade up and draft a quarterback and draft Drake May this year. I know the Giants see the writing on the wall about potentially being able to get out of Daniel Jones's contract after this year and how it's structured. Like all these things. This is somebody who is constantly laying out the lay of the land of where Daniel Jones stands on this roster and in this organization, and that the pressure is on him and all that. But that said, my goodness, I mean, we remember how bad it was at the beginning of last year with their inability to protect him, and we can't have this again. Come on. Miz, you got me going there. Matthew says, Pat, proud Holy Cross alum here. I visited Holy Cross when I was applying to schools. I really enjoyed it and considered going there. I actually think I would have liked it. I had some friends who went there as well. He says, what are the chances that Benton Whitley and or Ayir Asante make the team? My guess, Matthew, based on the depth chart and how it stacks up right now, is that those are guys who are on the practice squad but don't make the team. Asante definitely showed, to me, some interesting things in the spring, and I think would be a good developmental player. So it wouldn't shock me if both guys stay in the building but don't make the 53. NYOG says Eric Flowers 2.0. I'm assuming you're talking about Evan Neal. I hope not. Michael says, how are the safeties looking? Will Newbin be a starter? I do think Newbin eventually has to be a starter based on that investment, and certainly that would be the plan. We'll see if it actually comes to pass. I mean, we haven't seen him play in training camp, so looking forward to that. Will he be a starter eventually instead of right away if the injury lingers and he's not on the field? Maybe that's how it works. The safeties, nothing crazy has stood out to me other than just that play I told you that about with Dane Belton that was involved where he was kind of slow to break to the ball. I think Tuesday when we see third down in red zone is what I'm expecting, especially third down. Expecting more as far as insights into how the safeties are playing kind of the deep parts of the field, and kind of watching that. Belton has made some plays on the ball, some pass breakups in the back, and we know that Pinnock is athletic, but still looking for some, let's force some turnovers. Let's get some hands on the ball, right? Jackson says, at any point will we see a solidified offensive line or will we be battling health issues all summer? What should my level of worry be? Jackson, I would be worried because we need clarification on when's Neal going to be back. You need clarification on when Schmidt's going to be back. Illuminor is on the field and practicing, but bruised ribs are no joke. Like that's going to be a few weeks of, significant discomfort and pain that he's dealing with in order to practice and play. He did get beaten for what would have been a sack by Kayvon Thibodeau today as well. And to your point, Jackson, forget all the ins and outs, but just talking about inability to get your starting five on the line together in camp, I think this is going to keep lingering, and that's a major concern. You don't want to be going into week one with an offensive line that has moving parts and, hasn't gotten the time to gel. Like, they have to be ready to go. Giants Blue-Blooded says Daniel Jones seems way too inconsistent on these deep balls in camp. Is there a worry about his readiness week one? I do agree that, especially on that one day where he overthrew three guys, including Wan'Dale Robinson, deep for what would have been a touchdown. Those are concerns. And like I said, he's been a little bit more inaccurate than I don't think of him as an inaccurate quarterback. I just think sometimes he makes really bad decisions or panics, like rush decisions in key spots. But inaccuracy isn't usually his problem, but it has been at times in camp. So that's been a little odd to see, but not worried as I sit here and now about his readiness for week one. He definitely is the clear top quarterback on the team right now, based on what I've seen so far as well, despite all those struggles. Sadie says, what is up that we have Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence? What's up is that, Sadie says, what's up is that we have Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, and now Burns. I think, are you referring to that you're excited about the fact that they have those three key players? That's obviously, the guys that they need to rely on and lean on heavily to have success. At the moment, Thomas, he's healthy. Dexter Lawrence had an illness. Hopefully he gets back sooner. But he was really sick on Monday. And then Brian Burns, obviously we're waiting to hear on his foot. But yeah, those are not only like key players and top players, but that's where the Giants' major investments are. Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Daniel Jones, Bobby Okereke, and then a bunch of high draft picks. Like, that's where the Giants have invested, and that's where they need to, it needs to bear fruit, as they say. Alex, what's up? He says, good evening, Pat. What's your beverage for tonight? And 2, how worried are you on a scale 1 to 10 about our O-line? Seems like they just keep getting hurt. We don't have depth. This is just water. I'm boring tonight. I'll get back in the saddle, especially once we land that alcohol sponsor. I'll be sipping on whatever that is. Definitely, if I were drinking tonight, it would be an old-fashioned, because I'm in an old-fashioned kind of mood. But nothing for me tonight. Just taking it easy and enjoying my time with you guys as I hydrate. And then scale 1 to 10, my worry about offensive line right now. If 10 is, this is going to be a disaster, and 1 is everything's fine, I would say a 7. I think, I think that the inability for them to consistently play together, their starting five, and the injuries combined with the fact that we don't know how these backups or reserves are going to fare in starting or prominent roles if they have to log a lot of snaps, not to mention that there's a lot of pressure on them in a new scheme, a lot of new names. They're learning a new offense, and they have to learn the new offense while also learning how to work with new teammates and, running an offense that we saw them practice more running plays today on Monday than are typical for like a Brian Daboll offense or practice. But generally, this offense turns into more like jet sweeps and a passing heavy. There's just a lot of pressure on the O-line to protect. There are ways that, like I said, that Daboll gets the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly to his weapons. And, a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson is somebody they like to use there. But I'm concerned because of the inconsistency and the injuries and the fact that, we don't know even at full strength how Illuminor, Runyon Jr., Schmitz, Neal, or whoever is going to be the left tackle, and Thomas look as a group, even if they're all healthy and playing well. Like, is Illuminor going to fix the right tackle spot for the Giants, or will he have an acclimation period there or just be average? Will John Runyon Jr. lock down right guard and solidify right guard, or will that be a learning curve, right? Like, these are also questions you don't know. So to me, it's just worrisome that we can't even get to that base level because, listen, the Giants feel the same way, right? Like Joe Shane, Brian Daboll, Carmen Bracilla, like they all want this to be more solidified and steady too, because it holds everything up. And they know what it means. That creates more questions, is what it does. Your investments in your quarterback, you got to protect him. And it's their stated priority of the offseason was to invest in the line and get him a weapon and protect him. So concerning that we don't feel confident about that yet. Alex says, I know it's way too early, but what is your evaluation of DJ's play so far? Yeah, so as I said, has looked impressively healthy and strong, has made some really good plays and throws, but a lot of hiccups, a lot of inaccuracies at times, fumbled snap. I think very clear that he's knocking a bunch of rust off right now. Hopefully that's all it is with the inaccuracy. Giants Blue-Blooded says, if Jones can't turn it around under Daboll, will doubt start to creep in about Daboll's ability to develop quarterbacks? Feel like he's put on a pedestal due to the freak Josh Allen. Oh yeah, Giants. There's already doubt about whether it was more Josh Allen than anything else, and a lot of belief that it was more Josh Allen than anything else from some corners of the NFL, many corners of the NFL. Daboll, of course, had a lot of success, was a part of that, and that's what got him the Giants job, no question about it, and he deserves credit for being a part of that. But certainly, Daniel has enough physical skills that if you're a true, whisperer of sorts, are you elevating him or are you not? Right? That's a key question. And Blue-Blooded, of course, doubt will be cemented if that happens, because if Daniel Jones falls on his face and because Daboll can't make him any better this year, the Giants are going to have a new coach next season. That's what's going to happen. Tudo says Giants are going to go 11-6, and we say forget about it. Wow. Listen to Tudo calling a shot. Let's see. Seti says, I think the Giants should use Dexter Lawrence as a fullback lead blocker on the goal line. Hey, why not? He's as mean as anybody, big bodied. They offered Barkley a contract that he turned down last year, says Cecil. Yeah, they did. But the contract they offered him in January, or the first main contract that started getting leaked, only had $19 million guaranteed in it, but the average annual value was being reported as similar to what the Eagles ended up, giving him. But the guaranteed money was way lower, and Saquon Barkley felt like that was being misrepresented in the leaks in the media, and he turned it down because of the lack of guaranteed money. And the Giants did come up higher than that, but I think they ended up being either $3 or $4 million less than what the Eagles ended up putting down on the table guaranteed. So it wasn't the same offer. Yeah, they did make an offer. They did try. But then, as Saquon said, once they had the franchise tag in their hand, they stopped negotiating, and it just became a franchise tag or else situation from his viewpoint. And so everything kind of soured from there. So there was definitely a point at which they were trying, but they never ended up meeting him where he wanted to be financially and where the market ended up saying he was and the money he could earn, obviously. So, but yeah, a lot of wrinkles to that, obviously, as we've seen played out. Cecil said, he says, oh yeah, saw that. Michael says, Pat, any idea who is winning cornerback 2 spot? Seems like the DBs are getting beat a lot, or maybe Neighbors is just the real deal. Let's see. 1 second. Just have a text coming in here. Sorry about that. All right. So the question was, any idea of who is winning cornerback 2? Seems like DBs are getting beat a lot, or maybe Neighbors is just the real deal. Right now it's Cordell Flott. To me, Interesting that Darnay Holmes is logging snaps at outside corner with the second team defense, and so is Trey Hawkins. To me, that is startling. Darnay's a slot corner, who was in and out of the lineup, ended up actually being a really good special teamer for them, and then doing some good work in spot duty at slot corner last year. Trey Hawkins really struggled last year as a rookie, as a late round pick. Expectations have to be, I think, only so high for a player like that. So I think that's a major concern there. I don't think there's enough competition for Flott in the conversation. And, I think that they need more competition at that position. And maybe with Nick McLeod now on the outside, instead of in the slot in the first day of pads, maybe they're going to enter him into that competition now too. I don't know. But we'll see. Devin says, give Pat some likes for taking time out to answer our specific questions. Let's go. Devin, thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, it's a good reminder, actually. Obviously, if you want your comment or question answered immediately or have it rise to the top of the chat, you can purchase a super chat or a super sticker. Help support the channel. I always appreciate that. If you don't purchase a super chat or super sticker, though, I do ask, just hit that like button as we are live, because that helps YouTube's algorithm. It tells YouTube's algorithm, push this out to the NFL fans out there on YouTube. Push this to the Giants fans who don't know what we're doing yet on Talkin Ball Live. Push this to the NFL fans who don't know what we're doing and how we do these on game days and when we are live, because it will bring more people into our community. We've grown exponentially already. I want to say maybe a year ago, when I just started getting the ball rolling on a lot of this, I had, I don't know, 150 YouTube subscribers, whatever it was. We're inching toward 3,000 now. Hasn't even been a full year really of putting significant time into it. And that's because of you guys. That's because of your commitment and support and how much you care, and really how much you guys, I genuinely appreciate how much you guys value the time I spend here, the resources that I put into this, the work that I'm doing. And I can't thank you enough. I really do enjoy these. All right, let's see. Devin, really appreciate you doing that. That was very nice of you. So hit that like button, guys. Hit those likes. And I thank you to everybody who drops questions in too. Obviously, that is a huge part and a major part of what we do here, is this interaction. Chronicle says, I can confirm the conversation about the veto. Pat thought I was joking that he said they were gambling if they cut him. And then I pulled up the article and he said, damn. 100% true. 100% true. Matthew, thank you so much for that. $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Matthew Kelly. Appreciate you. Dr. Garrett says, am I crazy to think it's a no-brainer to make the legacies our home jerseys and the color rush whites our road? Thoughts? I like that idea. The color rush whites are sick. I think those are very nice. Even I think I want to say when Daniel Jones did the podcast Sims Complete with Matt and Phil Sims, when he was talking about their jerseys, those throwbacks they're wearing in week 1, he did say something about how he thought the color rush were really nice. And they are. I also think, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I know the red jerseys are not favorites. And I've even talked to John Mara about it. I told you that, but I know it's not their color, so you don't wear it all the time, but I love the Giants red, like the bright red. I love that. Let's see. Chronicle says, Pat, I really don't like the O-line depth. The more I look at it, the more I think if one of those core 5 guys go down, we are screwed. Similar to if Tay Banks or Dexter Lawrence go down, it seems like there's no depth. Yeah, I agree. Not good enough. Chronicle's seeing it on the field himself today and yesterday. I liked seeing Gunnar Olszewski at wide receiver today. His speed is good. He was rolling. Yeah, no, Gunner's a useful player, and also he just provided some reliability going back to last year with hands as far as punt returns, kick returns, special teams, and he does have some value at wide receiver. Yeah, it makes the wide receiver position interesting because he has reliability there, and you're looking for juice and the return game at wide receiver. You're also looking for somebody who's just going to make sure you have the football, right? And so if he can help as a receiver in the slot as well, another reason to say that he's got usefulness to remain on the team. Gary C., thank you so much. Checks in with a $5 super chat. He says, on Hard Knocks, Joe Schoen asked Mike Kafka what position he needs most, but cut away before the answer. What do you think he said? Do we know he's really asking Shane or he's really asking Kafka? No, I'm just kidding. What would he have said? I think he would have said offensive line or like a weapon at wide receiver. An offensive coordinator probably would say a top weapon at receiver. It's probably what an OC would say and what a Mike Kafka would say, but obviously a non-functional line. So, right tackle could have easily been the comment too at that point. Larry, what's going on? Good to see you. Matthew says, hey, Pat, not hearing much about Trey Hawkins. Will he contribute this year? He's playing with the second team defense. I think he had a pass breakup today. He did on a pass to Jarrett Stoll. There's my hockey coming out of me. Jack Stoll on the left sideline. But, listen, he was a guy who showed some promise in camp last year, and then we got into the real thing, and it was too much for him to handle, right? So to me, Trey Hawkins this is not the same thing, but he's a little like Lawrence Cager. He's different because he's a draft pick of Joe Schoen's. So, probably gets more rope, but similar in the sense that, even if there's some things they like about the player, there's some level of trust that still needs to be earned. And so, and that only the only way you can really earn it is to do it in the game, if that makes sense. So he just needs to prove that he can cover NFL wide receivers. And I think the best way I would say it is, Matthew, do you, a Giants fan, feel comfortable if Trey Hawkins has to go in against the Eagles to defend Devontae Smith if one of the corners gets hurt? Because right now he's one of the top two backups at corner on defense. So if it's Tay Banks and Cordell Flott starting and then one of them goes down, is Trey Hawkins guarding A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith? You tell me. Alex says, it's crazy to me that we're the most injured team in the league, yet it seems we have the least depth. And that, my friend, is how you become a bad team. Are you more confident with Daboll calling the plays rather than Kafka, says Michael? Michael, let's see. I'm more confident at least that, listen, last year, the idea that he was taking the play calling away from Kafka, then giving it back, then giving it to Shea Tierney, then giving it to Kafka, then taking it back for himself and all that doesn't help anybody. Taking the offensive meetings away for a month last year, all that doesn't help anybody. What I would be more confident about is just that it's just a smoother process to leave it as one thing, like have it be consistent, have people understand what it is, and don't be pressing panic buttons all over the place. So in other words, we know now the lay of the land is this is Daboll's offense, right? He's running it. He's doing it all. He's calling the plays. He's on the walkie-talkies, all that. So to me, that clarity, transparency, and consistency hopefully can help. It's also his offense. It always has been. So, is it a little wonky to have it be Daboll's offense with Kafka calling it when it's Daboll's offense, because that's what it is. That's what it always has been. So it's possible that could be a positive and an improvement as well. And then, am I more confident though with him calling the plays in general as far as how it will be effective in games? I think there could be moments where Daboll's experience doing it, yields better results than Kafka, who's a guy who was, doing it for the first time and trying to grow into the role and is much younger and kind of starting his ascension, hopefully in his mind, and to, head coach and more opportunities and that kind of stuff. So I also think Daboll calling plays, I'm interested to see how that affects like how he's managing games, because obviously we know on game days he's really struggled with his composure, and that has led to a lot of his and the team's problems, especially last season. So, maybe that helps him in that regard, keeps his mind off those things, but also he still needs to be able to manage the game, right? Timeout, situational football. So I wonder if that ends up being too much on his plate as well. Chronicle says, I like Gunner at punt return better than Isaiah McKenzie. Gunner can bring it back there, and Isaiah, I don't know about. Gunner started to get going today, and it was nice to see he can bring that, not just a punt returner. Yep. Larry says, starting with Tuesday, August 6th through Sunday, what days can a fan visit practice, and which days would you be there? Thanks, Pat. Larry, I am there every day. Let's see. The Giants, I do have that information. Let's check it out. Giants training camp. They sent out like a full media kind of information pamphlet. Let's see. Last open practice to the public is Tuesday, August 6th. So the last practice open to the public is Tuesday, August 6th. And that will be a joint practice, I believe, against the Lions. I'm pretty sure they're going August 5th and 6th against the Lions. And I'm there every day, Larry. So if you're there on August 6th, I will be there. And if you're going, direct message me on Instagram. Tell me you're there. Tell me where you'll be. We'll try to connect there. Chronicle says, if Dexter goes down, who's going to be next up? Because I don't think anyone is close to his talent to be DT1. Who's even playing by him? Nacho. I would like to see Ryder there, but I don't know. Yeah, so today with Dexter Lawrence not practicing, it was Nacho. It was Jordan Riley got some run. Ryder Anderson was in there. And I think did DJ Davidson get some time there as well? But those first three I mentioned were the first three up. Anderson, Nacho, and let's see, who was I mentioning? Yeah. Without Dexter Lawrence on the field, you can see that they can't get the same push up the middle. So that's why I was kind of taking with a grain of salt. Now, listen, the Giants offensive line deserves credit for blocking well on the snaps where they did hold up and give Daniel Jones time to throw. Like, they only can block and play against who they're playing against, which is only fair. But that said, it's a very different push and pass rush, to your point, up the middle when Dexter Lawrence is not there. Right. So it was Jordan Riley, Ryder Anderson, and Nacho were the first three D linemen up on the interior. Let's see. Alex says, you're right on, Pat. We have been the most injured team in the league since 2009. Why do you think it is that we are so consistently injured? I think that I think they are too light on the players' bodies in the ramp up to the season. I think that there have been some situations. Every situation is different, but there's been some situations where they've put players back on the field where maybe they shouldn't have been gone back on the field. And I do think that overall, the conversation about injuries just never gets to the root of the issue, which is, are guys sitting out? Are they coming back too quickly? Is an injury misdiagnosed, like with Evan Neal? Are they sitting out and getting a lot of rest during practices when they should be getting their body ready for football, and then their body isn't ready for those hits once they get there, right? And once they get to week 1 and week 2, like, are they football ready, or are they still ramping up? I think that the Giants evaluate their whole process, but I do think that there hasn't been a high amount of turnover in the area that manages players' bodies. They have changed strength and, conditioning staff this year, but that's not the medical training staff. So that's different. So anybody you hear, like even Joe Shane has talked about those, changes being reasons why they'll be better with guys' bodies. Like they're still not talking about the medical and training staff, which obviously is different from strength and conditioning. They're connected, but they're different. Barbara says, man, I wish they would stream those joint practices with the Lions. Might be better than preseason games. That's the truth. They were good in Detroit last year. And I've said already, like the Giants, for their confidence in how the season is going to go and for building up the right way, that's a really good and important first test, just those joint practices to show how they stack up against one of the more talented teams in the league. Alex says, do you put any stake in the idea that it has to do with our turf, or do you think it's a failure on the medical staff? No, I think the turf thing is an excuse. I mean, the turf, I do think the turf over the years has been an issue, which is part of the reason why not just the Giants players, but players around the league have complained about it. But I think it's also related to the Giants' inability to fully acknowledge and examine the whole process of who's in the room making the decisions on who's getting reps and snaps, who's taking off days, who's going back into games. I just think there needs to be a higher amount of accountability across the board. And I think that's why it keeps happening. Chronicle says, I love Nacho, but I don't know if he can hold it down when Dexter Lawrence gets hurt. Chronicles, you knucklehead. I see what you did there. There's tricky thumbs on the tweets, on the texts. Anyone that you think will be a surprise cut come time to finalize the 53-man roster, says Michael. Not a lot of guys on this roster that would qualify as surprises because it's not exactly a star-studded bunch. No, I mean, I think it'll really come down to, health. I think in the long run, because the Giants guys get hurt and banged up. I mean, inside linebacker. Let's look at inside linebacker like Carter Coughlin, Deontay Johnson were playing on the inside today. I like Johnson. I like Deontay Johnson. I saw there was one time today where he didn't notice the play called for him like coming off the field, and he had his position coach was kind of John Aguiguara was kind of almost like running onto the field, pulling him off the field. But young players still learning. But that's an interesting spot because they need those types of players. Carter Coughlin is a key special teamer as well, obviously. But you got Carter, you got Matthew Adams, you've got Darius Muasau, who's had a kind of a tough start to camp, I would say, draft pick. You've got McFadden, you've got Bobby, you've got Deontay. I mean, there's a lot of bodies there. So that's an interesting one. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the way that they're constructed, the Giants are not I forgot Matt Nelson was also a signing free agent wise on the offensive line, and he has only exclusively played as a third team tackle. So there you go. But no, I don't think there's anyone who at the moment qualifies as a shocking or a potentially surprising cut. Oh, don't forget Darian Beavers at middle linebacker too. He's made like a play a day the last couple plays playing with the reserves as well. So yeah, I guess I don't know. Would Cager be a guy who would qualify as a surprise to people if he got cut? Maybe because he does tend to make a lot of plays this time of year. So at the moment, that's where I see that. And then at running back, like we said, can Eric Gray get pushed out? Those types of things. I like Jayshon Corbin. He's not getting a lot of playing time, but I like him. Let's see. I don't know if our front seven can be manned well. If Dex goes down, that's what creates an easier time for Bobby O and Micah McFadden behind him, draws attention away from Thibodeau and Burns. Yeah, no, the Giants wouldn't survive Dexter Lawrence getting hurt. That is for sure. Noel Daly, what's up? Noel says, hey, Pat, thanks as always for being available. You got it. Thank you. Are they going to change the way they evaluate the performance of the players when cut day comes? Remember, they regretfully cut Tyree Phillips last year. Yeah, that's a really good question, Noel. I think they obviously there's a priority, I think, in a lot of NFL programs, there's a priority, and of course, they wanna be better and they wanna win more games, so they wanna do everything that's gonna help them do that as a franchise and an organization. But when you're adding your players and you're trying to incorporate your younger investments and, your draft picks, it creates situations where maybe you cut a veteran here who has slipped a little bit compared to last season, but you're forgetting that his experience and his ability to actually play in games is going to be more valuable than your rookie's development because he's not actually going to help you win, right? So that's what I think they need to play around with. That's why, you could have, I guess when you talk about surprise cuts, and cut down day, like is a guy like, as a guy like Darnay Holmes, a guy who was honestly surprisingly re-signed and then gets put at a position outside corner, which he really hasn't played. He's a name that people know. He's playing with the second team defense, but could he get cut? He's not a Joe Shane, Brian Daboll guy, right? Those are the types of players who kind of are in that space, right? But then again, if you're a regime, like I said, you need to value experience too. Like, are you keeping a Trey Hawkins who is your draft pick, but can't make as many special teams plays for you as Darnay Holmes can, right? So like those, I know we're talking about reserves here, but we were talking about making the 53 and who's staying and all that. You just have to remember, and also you have to remember where guys' actual value is to help you win on game day. And also, as much as you want your young players to develop and contribute, and you want to believe and project these guys are going to grow, you can't count on them being something they haven't been yet, right? So projection is one thing, and that's something that ends up yielding results sometimes, but also you have to guys show you who they are when they play on the field, and you have to believe them, and you have to understand that they're not going to be much different consistently than what they're showing you. And so to me, like Tyree Phillips, that's a good example of be careful about cutting veterans. That's what I would say, right? Like veterans who can help you. Like Allen Robinson, who's been in camp, really not getting any significant or meaningful snaps. That's a good example of a guy who could probably help a team like this if he's on the roster, but doesn't look like he's really getting much run at all, right? So where does that stand? Alex going off of Gabe's typo. Shall we start calling him Sexter Lawrence? Yeah, listen, I'm sure Sexy Dexy would go for that. I'm sure he would love that. Yeah, he'll probably trademark it if he hears that. Chronicles says, what do you think about Deontay Johnson getting some nice reps? And do you think there's a chance Daboll keeps three QBs? Three quarterbacks doesn't make much sense to me. You need all the help you can get on this team for sure. I guess it's always a possibility if they're going to hand DeVito the third string job in camp without competing with Rourke anyway. But that'll be something to see. Also, organizationally, are they going to, value DeVito's like public appeal, or are they going to purely evaluate him as a football player? That's actually probably a worthwhile question to ask Daboll. And then Deontay Johnson. Yeah, no, I like Deontay Johnson a lot. Like you said, getting a lot of nice reps. Asked him about that. There's an interview on my channel with Deontay, about 4 minutes, talking to him about his opportunity and who he is. Definitely a player I think has some potential there. Let's see. Alex says, I know you're not one for hypotheticals, but if we went through the year with a clean bill of health, what do you think our record would look like versus reality? I think the Giants healthy, if they don't get hurt, if they stay healthy as comprised and their top players play well and Neighbors turns out, right? Could they be a team that wins, 9 games or 8 games? I don't know, 8 8 probably is what I would say. Like a healthy 8 or 9 would be a healthy. I'm talking about you're asking me best case scenario, everybody stays healthy, right? But I obviously don't project them to win that. But yeah, I think you're talking about being closer to a 500 team than what I project them to be. Chronicles asks also, who is the surprise cut of the summer, Pat? Doesn't seem like there's many camp battles going on right now. Down here, actually, Matthew says, is Hodgins at risk? His performance was down last year. Isaiah Hodgins is also a guy, I would put him in that Darnay Holmes bucket of a guy who I didn't even expect really to come back here. Based on how they used him and handled him last season, is a red zone threat. But they did add some size in Theo Johnson at tight end where they think he might be able to be that. Chris Manhertz is here at tight end as well. I mean, he's definitely among the top reserves, and he works. Hodgins works with when they split between, let's say, the first teamers on one end and then the second and third on the other, doing some walkthroughs in red zone and stuff. Like Hodgins stays with Daniel Jones in that group. I believe the receivers who stayed with Daniel when he did that last time were Hyatt, Robinson, Neighbors, Slayton, Hodgins, and Isaiah McKenzie, I want to say, a couple days ago. So that was interesting. But yes, I do think I put Hodgins in that Darnay Holmes bucket of, right? I think that's a fair point. Chronicles surprise cut of the summer. Yeah, maybe it's a guy like that. Tony says, D-Kit, where you at? Yeah, D-Kit. Well, this is what I love about this community too. Obviously, people can't make every chat every time. But like D-Kit was here last time we did the live chat last Thursday, and he essentially drove it. Like he and I drove the chat for the most part with others' help. And so, he was doing a lot. He was doing a lot of heavy lifting last week on Talkin Ball Live. So I appreciated that from D-Kit. He's a diehard. Remember, everybody, if you jumped in late or you didn't make it, you can always listen to the entire show on audio on Apple, Spotify, on the Believe Network, or watch it in full on YouTube on my channel at PL on NFL. Yes, there are a lot of wide receivers on this roster. It's actually funny. Drew Lock said today he was giving credit to different players, and he said Isaiah, and then he goes Isaiah, and he said, man, there's so many Isaiahs on this team. I thought that was pretty funny. Tony thinks the Giants will win 4 games. I agree. Let's see. Tony says healthy and still 4 wins. Ooh. Devin says, have you observed any obvious difference in drills practice philosophy with Brasillo compared to Bobby Johnson? Not at the moment. I mean, we talked to them in the spring, Devin, about how they were being coached. And they talked a lot about how he was working on specific techniques, hand placement, things like that. So I think it was a lot of technical work in the off season, that type of stuff. Now I see, somebody who's starting to get intense, show some urgency. Johnson, we saw some urgency and some intensity as well. During practice, obviously they had the 3-guard rotation last year, but that wasn't just Bobby Johnson. I mean, that was, Brian Daboll as well. So we haven't seen that yet, but they have had to mix and match because of their issues with injuries and stuff. But also I would say, Devin, you could throw Brasillo and obviously Shane and Daboll into this, but just their quick pivot off of Evan Neal at the start of camp to just like throw Illuminor right out to right tackle after playing him all at left guard during the spring and telling him and basically having him train as a left guard going into camp. I mean, that's strange, and listen, it's probably best for the team that Illuminor is playing a right tackle because it's his better position. It's his best position, but still just as far as how they're pivoting and handling, unusual. And also they're signing John Runyon Jr. to be a starting right guard, but center snaps, but you also signed Austin Schlottman. I mean, Chronicle says Allen Robinson is about to look like a preseason star. He looks good out there when he gets chances, but he's running with the third team. He has been a really good player in his day. Alex says, also, can we just take a moment to appreciate that Pat takes this time out of his day to answer every single question more than a reporter? Thank you so much, Alex. I really do enjoy these. And thank you so much for participating tonight and being here. Chronicle says special teams are actually practicing this year rather than T-Mac's lazy practices that looked like so casual with no speed or intensity. I don't think they didn't practice special teams under T-Mac. And he doesn't decide when how long they practice special teams for, or when the periods are either. I will say, when McGahee was here, my best understanding, it seemed like it was coming from above his head. I mean, that's how he always made it sound in the press conferences, but it just always felt like the Giants would have somebody pop as a returner, and then they wouldn't give the guy a chance in real games. Like Jason Corbin, who's still on the roster, I remember him showing some good stuff in the kick return in preseason, and then we just never saw him on kick return again. I don't get it. I just I don't get it. H5000 says it comes down to the O-line. A top 15 line gives a decent chance at a wild card. A bottom 5 O-line guarantees no shot at the playoffs. No doubt, H5000, no doubt. But this is the thing. They don't have to be perfect. They just have to be competent. That's what you need. Competence. That's all we're asking for. Doesn't have to be elite, right? Like you say top 15, H5000. I even say top, I don't know, like top 20 would be an improvement. Tony says, I'm highly concerned, Pat, with the open spaces in the secondary, especially because of who we are facing week 1. You should be, Tony. You should be. Essentially, it's going to boil down to whether or not the pass rush can get home, is what it looks like. Alex says, you're right, Tony. I think J.J. McCarthy is going to give us a lot of trouble. I think that game really comes down to whether or not the Vikings get adequate quarterback play. If the Giants can pick on either a, obviously mistake-prone Sam Darnold or a rookie and J.J. McCarthy making his first start, then that's the path to victory there. But if the Vikings get good quarterback play in that game, could be a long day. Chronicle says, Pat, I know you love T-Mac, but let's face it, he never took full advantage of the special teams time he got. Oh, no, I mean, I wasn't saying that about him personally or anything. That really wasn't what that was about. I'm just saying, yes, there were some years that they were really bad on special teams, but I never thought it was lazy practicing on it. That was the reason. But I like I said, I never understood the returner stuff. I don't get it. But I also, my impression was it always went over his head. Like other people were making the calls over him. Oh, you mean Justin Jefferson? Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah. Well, he needs someone to throw him the ball though, too, right? But yeah. Corbin's still on the roster. He was actually getting the first couple of days of practice. He was a little bit more prominently featured than he has been recently. He's a good player. He's another guy, kind of like in the Cager mold, where like he makes plays but just doesn't get more opportunities when he does. Tony says, what people don't understand is quarterback helps offensive line. If Jones doesn't do what needs to be done to help his line, the line will also fail him. That's true. No, it's on both. It's on both. But I do think it's important to point out it goes both ways, right? The Giants need to not let Daniel down with how they're composing this line and building this line and whether they're keeping it healthy. And then Jones has to be able to push the ball down the field because the line shouldn't need to protect for 4 or 5 seconds for the Giants to make plays either, right? And you do need to make plays off schedule. Alex says, Pat, if you were to decide the running back room for the final roster, who makes it and who's cut? I'm probably going out and finding a downhill runner somewhere that isn't on the team yet. That would be number one. And so it would be that guy, whoever that is, if I could find him, Devin Singletary, and as a 1-2 punch. And I would have Corbin on the team and and Tyrone Tracy, I guess, right? Given the fact that he's a draft pick. And then I guess, is Turbo then makes Turbo the odd man out. But, that would be my answer at the moment. And the Giants do seem like they need another running back, like a downhill runner, to me. Let's see who's available at running back at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see. Free agency, running backs. Who we got? Brandon Bolden, Damian Harris, Matt Breida, Kareem Hunt, Latavius Murray, Jerick McKinnon. Yeah, I've always said Latavius could be, he could be that guy. I mean, Brightwell still unsigned after they waived him injured. He's a downhill runner that they obviously know. But, kind of slim pickings out there. Maybe, let's see. Right. Cager got a chance until Buffalo when he got in the doghouse. Exactly. Let's see. Tony says, Michael, he needs to scramble often this season. If he takes off, will help big time. Alex, I'm not a fan of Eric Gray's skill set. Nice guy, though, but yeah, I wouldn't put him in my running back room. Alex likes Tyrone Tracy Jr., the rookie out of Purdue. Yeah, no, Hunt's a free agent, I believe. I was just looking at like a free agent list. He obviously has the domestic violence in his past, which is, given the Giants' history and their priorities, I would presume would be a no-no. So that, that might be why he's not a Giant. That's just me. That's me speculating, though. I haven't talked to anybody about that. I'm just saying. Michael says more risk for injury, but I agree with you in 2022. He was very successful with taking off, but I want to say part of that is because of the poor line play, that if they get consistency from the line. Yeah, it was right. It was protecting all kinds of elements of the offense, really. Tony says Hunt is probably waiting for a running back injury somewhere and go right in. Yeah. And players like that, too, are usually waiting for – they're just right. They're waiting for somewhere that's going to pay them. Pay them and play them. Guys, this has been amazing. We've gone live for 2 hours and 17 minutes and counting here on Talkin Ball Live. Audience keeps growing. The questions are great. The information is flowing. I think I brought a lot from the first padded practice to you guys this evening. Everyone listening on audio, I appreciate you tuning in while you're driving to work or going for a run or whatever you're doing. Remember, if you have questions about around the league as well, when we do these, feel free to drop those in. Fantasy football questions, we could do those. But obviously, I'm out at the Giants every day and having a lot of fun breaking down this team for you guys and trying to be your eyes and ears. And also really admire you guys doing that as well, like Gabe being out there at practice today. I want to tell you guys one more time about Boom Chaga. Our podcast here, Talking Ball with Pat Leonard, is brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink right here. Natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. And if you use the discount code TalkinBall25, as you can see right here, or access it through the QR code on your screen, you'll get 25% off your first subscribe and save order. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. We are also brought to you by Bet Online and also by Estate 98 Coffee and Esencia de Cafe from El Salvador. Dates back to 1798. go get it on the TikTok shop. I believe it's Drink Estate 98 on Instagram and Estate 98 Coffee on TikTok, or Drink Estate 98. And that'll do it for this episode of Talkin Ball Live. Not going to be going live this Thursday. Have a birthday in the family to celebrate, an important one, and want to be fully present with the family for that. Hope you guys can understand and appreciate that. But we will be back live on no later than Monday, August 5th, for Giants Lions joint practice recap and preview of day 2 as the Giants enter the full preseason time of preparing for real games, and as the roster starts taking shape. And we're going to dive into all the machinations of the personnel, the depth chart, how Brian Daboll's offense is progressing, how Daniel Jones is looking, and what potential additions the Giants may be making as we go down the road. You guys have been amazing. Thank you to Joel, Tuto, Hunter, Peter, Ryan, Matthew, and Gary for your super chats tonight. Really do appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who participated. NYOG says, thank you, Pat. Tony says, thanks, Pat. Matthew says, thanks. Get some sleep. Tony, thanks for saying that. Don't forget to hit the like button, y'all, on your way out. When you hit the like button when we are live, that helps push it on the algorithm to people who don't know about Talkin Ball yet, people who don't know about what we're doing here. It'll bring them to the community, which we want. Michael says, thank you, Pat. We appreciate you taking the time. Go Big Blue. Alex says, awesome stream as always, Pat. Thanks for all the info and good ball talk. D Kit checks in late and says, I missed it. D Kit, we were shouting you out. You have your brand is strong. And I explained to people who were saying, hey, D Kit, where are you at? I said, D Kit was here last time helping me carry the chat. Right. So I appreciate it, D Kit. He has questions. Wait, D Kit has questions. All right. D Kit, drop them. Let's go. We're here. I'm not dipping. Bonus 5 minutes, D Kit. Let's go. Let's see. Alex says, remember Hard Knocks tomorrow night on Tuesday, July 30th. That's a good point. Hard Knocks finale upcoming. That'll be interesting to see. Wrap that up. That'll be fun. And yes, as Michael said, subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe. Please hit those like buttons, and tell your friends, tell your Giant fan friends, tell your NFL fan friends, about all the content I'm producing here. And remember, guys, if you're not on YouTube Shorts a lot, I put a lot of content on YouTube Shorts. I put it out on Instagram at times and Twitter at times and TikTok as well. But I really do like housing this all on YouTube. And I either put Giants highlights, I put press conference quotes, I put player interviews, I put rapid fire analyses up. And I think you'll get a lot out of those during the day that'll intersperse and kind of supplement what we do here on the podcast. D Kit, it's a shoulder for JMS. We don't know how serious it is yet. But we're going to be digging more into that because that's obviously a concern given last year. Thank you, Todd. Thanks for saying that. Tony, you were straight fire tonight, bringing the heat on the chat. Appreciate you. D Kid also wants to know what is going on with the defensive backs. Is it as bad as it looks? I would say D Kid, it's like this, how we always talk about the O-line and say there are some names and some potential, but there's just some frustrations and some things that clearly need to be figured out for them to take a different step. Like that's where the secondary is right now. I mean, here's how I interpret it. Tay Banks is a number 2 corner who is still trying to get better, and he has to be their number 1. Cordell Flott is a slot corner who they are at the moment handing the number 2 outside corner spot. Jason Pinnock, to me, is at best a number 2 safety who at the moment is a number 1. Dane Belton to me is a number 3 safety who's a number 2, right? Like that's the way I look at it right now, as far as how their roster shakes out, especially in the secondary. And, I think that's a concern. Yes, there have been some openings in the secondary. Some of the reserves have made a lot of plays. I mean, David Long Jr. made a couple plays today. Javarius Owens with a pick of Tommy DeVito. Hawkins got his hand on a ball. But yes, I mean, listen, Banks and Neighbors, like there was a day a couple practices ago where Neighbors made some good plays. And I walked out the field and somebody who was there said something like that Neighbors had dominated Banks. And that wasn't true that day. Banks won some reps and Neighbors won some reps that day. So, I don't think in those battles, it's not as one-sided as maybe some are portraying it. That said, yes, there are plays being made downfield at times by the Giants offense. And, they've hit deep shots, one to Neighbors, one to Hyatt. I do think that, and I've said this before on here, D-Kit, this. I think that even though the offense has a ways to go to be, competent and, just average again, I think the defense is going to be much worse than people realize. And what I mean is, obviously we know that, both sides of the ball are going to have strengths and weaknesses, right? But I think the defense is going to regress. I think it has less creative coaching now. I think it has personnel holes. And I believe that it's going to come down to either the D line gets there or there's going to be a lot of problems. That's how I see it. D-Kit checks in with a $10 super chat for me letting him ask a question. D-Kit, this is why you're the best. This is why all you guys are the best. Thank you so much for that. You didn't have to do that, obviously. I really do appreciate that, man. You are a big time supporter of the channel. I won't forget it. D-Kit, I also said earlier, I got a new logo in the works that's going to be revealed soon. I got some swag coming. Looking forward to getting all that out there. And we're only going to be turning up here on Talkin Ball Live. It's going to keep going, keep getting better. And I appreciate that. Antonio's here late as well. Tony says, wow, that's a good point of view. I think we're talking about like the depth chart and where guys stand. That definitely makes sense. And then D-Kid says, last one. If you had to guess, do you think Daniel Jones is going to play in the preseason? D-Kid, without knowing anything about it, like in other words, what I mean is I haven't asked anybody that specifically and nobody has told me anything about that. I say yes, he does play some in the preseason. Purely because there's so much new about what they're doing here. So I do think he will play in the preseason. That's just my off the cuff answer based on what they need to do to prepare and get ready. D-Kit ordered Boom Chaga. Boom D-Kit, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing that. We have an official order of Boom Chaga from D-Kit. I appreciate that. I think you'll like it. Report back. Let me know what you think. Like I said, I actually, when I do that ad read for Boom Chaga, and I mentioned that I put it in my coffee every morning and I feel a post-workout like energy boost. Like that's exactly like my experience with it. That's not like an ad read. That's, somebody just telling you how to feel. Like that's actually how I feel when I take it. So that's my personal 2 cents. I appreciate you, D-Kit. Let's see. Mike Ross checks in. Thank you, Mike, with a super chat. He says, Jalen Hyatt looking good, wide receiver 2. Mike, I think Hyatt, I think on this team, as far as targets go, I think you're going to look at, let's see, Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson right now look like the guys who are going to get the most targets. And then you're looking at Slayton and Hyatt. I'd almost say Hyatt will end up being Now, he could be the guy who hits the home runs and scores deep touchdowns, but I think it's going to be higher volume going to Neighbors and Robinson and Slayton is the way I see it, like when they're on the field. But I would say definitely Neighbors and Robinson here, and then it's like Hyatt and Slayton. How does that shake out? D Kit, what are you saying? $50 on Amazon is Boom Chaga? No, you got to go get it. I hope you went and got it at boomchaga.com with the Talkin Ball code for 30, right? I hope you did that with the subscribe and save. And like I said, you could do the subscribe and save option and then just dump it after that if you want. It's just a way to get it cheaper. Okay, cool. Let's see. Tony says, thank God we need these dudes to get reps in the preseason. Yeah, like to me, now listen, I will couch that Daniel Jones answer about preseason playing time with, they do tend to use, like a lot of teams, not just the Giants, like when they have the joint practices against the Lions, the joint practices against the Jets, they do use those as way to get first team reps best on best and not necessarily play them in the preseason games. But to me, like, you got to get these guys some run. That's my opinion. Iconic. You missed a lot. Don't worry. Lot to catch up on. And the chat rewind will be up immediately here on YouTube. We talked about, Burns, Cager, Tamon Fox, John Michael Schmitz, and injuries. I gave a bunch of updates and analyses and kind of reports on what I saw at the first padded practice. We talked a lot about how does Daniel Jones look, the secondary, and dished on a lot of good stuff. Iconic. So no worries. Showing up late. Doesn't always happen. But I appreciate all your support, Iconic, and all you guys. No, D Kit got the $30 deal. He's on it. Antonio asks, are they still having conversations with Greg Van Roten? Do you think something gets done? Every time I check in on that, my understanding is that, the door is open as far as, those conversations. It's not like they, both sides said no to each other and it's not an option anymore. But there hasn't been anything live happening, as we sit here now on July 29th. So we will see, Antonio. D Kid says, not happy I missed tonight. Not going to lie. All good, D Kid. Thank you so much for the super chat and for checking in with some of those late questions to help us round it out. Appreciate you guys. Really do. All right. I'm going to check out. Thanks so much. D Kid's going to watch the replay. You guys should as well. This has been another episode of Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Like I said, Thursday, I'm going to take the night off from Talkin Ball Live purely because we got a big family birthday we're going to celebrate. I want to give my full attention to that. But keep following on YouTube Shorts for updates from practice, and on my Twitter, X, PLeonardNYDN, also on Instagram, PL on NFL, and TikTok. And there is an interview up now with Rich Salgado, a behind-the-scenes insurance specialist and executive who has a lot of interesting NFL and Giants connections and some great Giants Super Bowl stories I think you guys will enjoy. I will tease that on social media on the morning of Tuesday, July 30th. And, obviously keep reading the daily news because sometimes there's so much happens in these practices. What I like to do is focus on a main story for the New York Daily News. And I write that story. And then I have practice notes under it where I put, insights into some of the big plays made, some of the mistakes, injury updates, those kinds of things. But I also save a lot of it for what I'm going to do content-wise here on the YouTube channel, right? So I'll put some in the paper and then I'll supplement that with what we do here. And so hopefully you can take all of that, as a big picture of, full context of what the team has looked like. Bill says, holy crap, you're still going. Yep, just wrapping up now, Bill. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much. Brett says, thanks again, Pat. Go Giants. Guys, you're the best. Over 2 hours and 30 minutes. Have a great night. Have a great week. Looking forward to another padded practice. Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. See you guys next time.